Hi, I'm Angela McCrum, and I'm glad to have this program tonight. There's a lot to learn about cooling caps, and we've got a great team together who will help navigate and give some background and explain what cooling caps are. Patti Frey is going to be our first presenter, and she has her master's in nursing and is an oncology certified nurse at Northwestern Medicine Regional Medical Group. Patti was instrumental in setting up the DigniCap scalp cooling system at Northwestern Medicine Delnor Hospital. Patti will cover the basics tonight, such as what exactly is a cooling cap and how does it work and is it effective. Jennifer Tepper is an advanced practice nurse at Northwestern Medicine Lake Forest Hospital. Jennifer was one of the first at Northwestern to use the DigniCap scalp cooling system on her patients with cancer. Jennifer will talk about the DigniCap system now in place at Northwestern Medicine, where it's available, and how to prepare for it. And lastly, we have Alison Zubel, who is a cancer survivor and the founder of Hoopla for Hair. Alison's story and generosity are pretty amazing. We'll let her tell you about her cancer journey with a cooling cap and her charity, Hoopla for Hair, which she started to help patients access cooling caps at nominal cost. Please hold your questions until the Q&A at the end of the discussion. And again, please remember to mute yourselves if you're not speaking. Our first speaker is Patti. Welcome, Patti.
Thank you. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about what is scalp cooling and give a little bit of background. And so one of the things that we hear most often from patients is that one of the most distressing and disturbing things about receiving chemotherapy is the thought of losing their hair, and it's very scary. It's a continual reminder for patients that are receiving chemotherapy that they're sick, that they have cancer, and unfortunately, when they finish chemotherapy, their hair doesn't just automatically come back. It can take 3 to 6 months or sometimes even longer for your hair to return. And again, every time you look in the mirror, it's just a continual reminder of what you've been through, of that cancer diagnosis, and that you were sick. This can have a negative impact on people's self-image, on their sense of well-being, on their confidence level. And there are even some patients that will refuse treatment because they're afraid of the hair loss or don't want the hair loss, or they're not compliant with completing their treatment because of hair loss. So scalp cooling is done, we use something called a DigniCap, and it helps reduce hair loss related to some chemotherapies and has been around for a number of years. It's not completely new. Years ago, however, we didn't have the automatic cooling devices that are available now, and we filled caps with ice, and we filled plastic bags with ice. We attached them to people's heads. We didn't necessarily know how long to leave them on before people started treatment. We didn't know how long they should be on after treatment. We just did it. And in the late 1980s, early 1990s, there was a lot of concern that cancer cells were being allowed to escape from the chemotherapy and that they were spreading to people's scalp, depositing the original cancer to what we call metastases to the scalp. It was at that time that the FDA removed the current caps or products that were available on the market. And so between that time and 2015, there really wasn't much in the way of scalp cooling. In 2015, DigniCap received FDA approval with clinical trials proving there was no difference in the incidence of cancer that spread to the scalp as a result of scalp cooling versus patients who didn't have any cooling to their scalp. Since that time, there have been additional clinical trials done that also support this. So it has been proven to be safe. How does it work? Well, it works, there's a machine. The way that it works at Northwestern is there's a machine that probably is the size of maybe maybe 18 inches by 18 inches and maybe 3 feet tall or 4 feet tall. And it has a hose that goes in and out, and it attaches to a hat that hooks onto the patient's head. The hat has like little bubbles in it, kind of like bubble wrap, that fill with cold fluid. And the fluid goes in and out of the machine, staying at a constant temperature. And then there's a neoprene like hat that goes over that to keep it tight to the scalp. Why does this prevent hair loss? Well, it prevents hair loss because chilling the scalp before and after chemotherapy and during the treatment decreases the blood flow to the scalp, and the metabolism of the hair cells is also thought to be reduced. So they're kind of going to sleep. They're not as active as normal. And this means that they may be less at risk for the chemotherapy because they're not turning over as quickly. And so hair cells then avoid exposure to the full dose of chemotherapy. They survive the treatment, and as a result, hair is thought to be less likely to fall out. Now with DigniCap, we're able to maintain that desired cold temperature and achieve it much more consistently than we could before with the ice caps or even with the gel caps that are kept on dry ice. Scalp cooling helps patients more than just reducing hair loss. It helps, just like we said, it helps them maintain that self-esteem. It helps them maintain their identity. They appear normal when they look in the mirror. It also protects their privacy. There are some people that don't want everyone to know that they have cancer and they're receiving treatment. And if you have a wig or if you lose your hair, people are worried that people will notice and then they have to explain it. If you keep your own hair, then there's less, you have more privacy and you decide who you want to tell. You have more control. So does scalp cooling prevent everyone from losing their hair? It really doesn't. Some people will still lose some hair with using scalp cooling and the DigniCap. What the studies have shown is that 43 to 66% of people avoid significant hair loss. And what they define as significant hair loss is losing more than 50% of your hair. So basically what we tell people when we're talking about scalp cooling is that half the people that use scalp cooling will lose 50% or less of their hair. So we try to set that stage.
I am the patient, and I'm the person in this group that has actually used this technology. And I just want to tell you about why it was important to me and how it worked. And just to preface this, I was diagnosed before Del Nor, my cancer center in Geneva, had the automated cooling cap. So I used the manual method, which I will explain. And it was very, very different, but I do want to tell you why it was so important for me to save my hair. So having said that, the cancer I had was called triple positive. This means that it was sensitive to the hormones, estrogen and progesterone, as well as a protein called HER2. We came to learn that only 20% of breast cancers are HER2 positive, and that makes the cancer more aggressive. Because HER2 positive cancer is angry, it automatically gets chemotherapy and a year's worth of immunotherapy. Doesn't matter how large the tumor is or if it was spread to the lymph nodes, we were told that you must have chemotherapy as your insurance policy. I was 42 years old at diagnosis. So this was a week after I was diagnosed, my husband and I met with Dr. Manini, and that was the game changer for us. He assured us that we would have everything we needed. And are we good?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. My screen kind of went blank.
Oh.
He assured us that he would be there for us, and while he did recommend chemotherapy, he promised that it would not be the hell on earth that I imagined. I thought I would be on the bathroom floor, bald and huddled and horrifically sick, and it wasn't that was not at all my experience. This is music to my ears, and he suggested I try to save my hair, and that was all I needed to hear. I was not going to be the bald, sick person in my imagination. I researched scalp cooling using Dr. Manini's handout as a guide to identify the various companies that help women save their hair. I came to learn there are two methods of scalp cooling, manual and automatic. At the time, like I just said, Del Nor and many other cancer centers around Chicagoland did not offer machines that would automate this process, so we used the manual capping method. I rented gel caps that look like bike helmets from a company in New Jersey. They shipped and supplied everything we needed for success: 8 gel caps, a cooler, a thermometer, and a timer. For the first round, we even hired a professional nurse who flew in specially to cap my head and to train my pit crew, who were my husband and my mother-in-law. The day before each of 6 rounds of chemo, my father-in-law would make the trip to the local dry ice dealer and fill the coolers with 80 pounds of dry ice. The team then filled each of the 8 caps with dry ice pellets, cooled them overnight to a temperature of 35 degrees below zero. And then beginning an hour before treatment, during, and for 4 hours after the chemo sessions, my team would strap these gel caps to my head, changing them every 20 minutes. Over the course of an 8-hour day, that means they changed 24 caps, and over the course of my treatment, over 140 caps. I stuck panty liners to my forehead and ears to prevent frostbite, and the straps that help the helmets adhere to the scalp were so tight that talking was an effort and eating was out of the question. For 6 months, I slept on a silk pillowcase to reduce friction on my hair, washed my hair in only cold water and only twice a week. I used no products or heat, even ponytails were a no-no. I didn't look particularly great, but I didn't look like I had cancer. Avoiding baldness had nothing to do with the success of my treatment, but it helped ensure that the periphery of my life remained the same. I never had to face a bald head in the mirror. I never received a knowing and sympathetic look from a stranger at the grocery store or from a mother in the pickup line at school. And to be honest, I didn't feel bad for the entire year, so why should I look sick? On the days when I felt at my worst, my children did not see cancer, they saw mom. This had nothing to do with vanity. After my treatments were over and I was feeling human again, I was committed to giving back somehow, some way. I decided to make it my mission to help women save a little slice of themselves during chemotherapy. I learned that Del Nor Cancer Center was soon piloting an automated scalp cooling technology, and that was music to my ears. As you've seen, this automatic method of scalp cooling will allow a patient to simply wear a cap that is attached to a cooling system for the duration of their treatment. No cap changes, no coolers of dry ice. We spent $4,000 to save my hair, not one penny covered by insurance. In January, my husband and I held a fundraiser we called Hoopla for Hair, with the goal of raising $40,000. This amount of money would fund the Del Nor Cancer Center's program for a year. Del Nor would offer this free of charge to its patients. That night, we raised over $90,000 and are thrilled to be able to help others walking this path. This is the next generation of cancer treatment. This will change lives, and we are overjoyed to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Alison, for sharing that story. And I'm just blown away that you were able to raise that much money. This is going to help so many people. It's just amazing. So I'll tell you a little, for my portion, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. In terms of how this works at Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital, we've been doing it for almost 2 years. This September will be 2 years, and we've placed over 250 caps and done over 250 treatments. We've had some great success, and it's been such a joy to see people keep their hair. Just to all of your points, just it's been so gratifying, and patients are able to walk throughout their life anonymously. Nobody has to know anything. They tell people who they want to tell. Those that they don't need to know, right? So they just feel normal. And it's just been an amazing opportunity to be able to provide that. We had several grants as well, just like what you were doing, which was really a great way to start. We were able to provide it for anybody that was eligible. So we say, who's eligible to do this? Well, there definitely are some criteria, and even those that are eligible, it's not for everybody, right? The first thing that we would look at is what type of regimen are they receiving. There's a little card that comes with the machine of all of the regimens, chemotherapy regimens that this has been tested upon. Anybody outside of this, we've definitely not done it on, because we want to know what the data is. We need to know what the cooling time is. We need to know what the success rate is to be able to actually explain that to people, right? So that's a piece of it. The other piece of it is, yes, it does, take more time, right? So they need to get there a little bit earlier. They need to stay several hours later. For some people, that's not an option, right? But the nice thing is when they came in, our nursing staff, myself, my other navigator, Kathy, and we started to get some of our nursing staff on board as well, took care of everything for them. And we had some patients that started with what you started with, Alison, and switched over to the DigniCap when we got it. And the husbands were like sitting back and just so thrilled that they could just support their wives instead of having to recap temperature, dry ice. It's a lot of work. So it's really allowed, the support person to really just support them instead of, what they've had to do in the past. There's some other criteria as well. There's some other medical contraindications, and I can't, all of those are escaping me right now, but the doctor, before recommending this and bringing us in to discuss it, have to make sure that they're medically eligible. Things such as skin cancers, scalp cancers, some certain cold agglutinin disorders, which are pretty rare. Metastatic disease, we're not doing it for any stage 4 cancer. And there's been some safety concerns with that. The thought would be if there's circulating cancer cells, again, we don't want to give them a safe place to hide. And then it's very regimen dependent. There are some regimens like what you received, Alison. Our patients have done really, really well. I'm assuming that you got like TCHP or something like that.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. And so people do really well. We've had great success. A couple other regimens, we were really encouraging people to do it because we're like, you literally will not lose any hair. We got to do this. And there are some regimens such as AC where 50% of people keep 50% of their hair. We've not had a lot of good success with that. So, how much you're going to encourage somebody to do this, again, is greatly dependent upon how well do we think this is going to work. Having a grant like you've able to provide it, like you provided, and like we had, I mean, we had nothing to lose. If people were willing, money was never an option or never an issue for these people. And we were able to provide a ton of services to people that would have never been able to afford them. So it feels really good. So you're amazing. I think that's just great. In terms of how people prepare to do a scalp cooling, so there's lots of education, as you can attest to, Patti, on the front end, right? You're finding the right people, even people that are eligible of that pool of people. A lot of people just might not be willing to do it. As you mentioned, Alison, your hair didn't maybe look, first of all, it looks amazing right now, but day to day, it maybe didn't look great. And there's some people that said, well, I'm a lawyer in a law practice. I've got to have good hair every day. In that case, maybe you're better off with the wig and putting on something that what it's going to look like every day. So there were some people that just said, that's just not for me. So even of those that are eligible, some people didn't want to do it. The fact that it was free, obviously, that really brought a lot of people in. We had one patient that actually drove, so we're up in Lake Forest, that drove 400 miles a week to get the DigniCap for 12 weeks. She kept all of her hair, 400 miles a week. That was a doctor's visit ahead of time. Then that was, she drove from Indiana, 12 weeks. But it was so worth it. At the end of this, she had all of her hair and it was amazing. And we were so happy to do it. We are currently doing it at our Lake Forest Hospital, as well as our Grays Lake location. As we cycled off all the people as the pandemic started, we stopped taking new people. So we haven't done any for about 2 months. And our plan is, because we've gone through all the money that we've been given, that we're going to have patients start paying for their own. We have applied for some women's boards grants that we are going to provide patients that really can't pay. So we still have in our back pocket the ability to hopefully treat a couple people. But when we go back to doing DigniCap, everybody will have to pay for their own. So you're in such a great position, Patti, and your organization to be able to provide this for free, because a lot of people, when it comes time to pay, just might not be able to. The good news is, as we're told by the company, is that many insurance companies are starting to get on board with covering a portion of this, just like they would potentially cover a portion of a wig, right? Some wigs can be very expensive. So we hope that, as we get back on board with this, that many insurance companies will be able to also participate and help these people out, because it's about $350 per treatment. So you can imagine if you have 6 treatments, that's a lot, or 12 treatments. So I don't know when we'll have the green light to actually start doing these again. We've got all the machines, we've got all the supplies, we're anxious to do it, but just from the deciding committee that sort of has been running this program sort of said, the extra time in the clinic and the close exposure maybe isn't worth it right now. So we look forward to resuming, but again, we'll have a new model when that time comes. Let's see. And I know that we've spoken with you out in the West many times. We've spoken to our partners downtown at Northwestern, who don't have anything like this at this point. They really want to. They're all like you, Alison. All of their patients have to bring all of their own things. And I think part of their hesitation is they just don't know what to do with the volume of people that have to stay there for a little while afterwards, right, to cool. You could cool for 90 minutes. Some regimens, people stay to cool up to 3 hours. And so they just can't accommodate that. So they don't want to go down that path because they don't know how they'll be able to accommodate it. So lots of people use it also downtown in Northwestern, but they all are responsible for bringing in their own coolers, just like you did. Yeah. So I think the other thing that, and you sort of alluded to this a little bit, Alison, how do people prepare for these treatments? They have to know that, again, they are on like hair care lockdown for the entire course of treatment and a few months beyond, as you mentioned, washing one or two times a week, paraben-free, sulfate-free products, no heat, no, curling irons, no hair dryers, a silk pillowcase, no clips, no rubber bands. So they have to kind of be ready to say, you know what, I'm just going to have some bad hair days coming up and I'm okay with that, So for some people, that's not, they don't want to do that. So they have to be on board. They have to be committed, because if they don't, it's not going to work as well,
Right.
No coloring of your hair, no, dramatic cutting of your hair. So you just kind of let it go for a while. And I think those were sort of the things that were on my list to talk about.
And we do have, so in the West region at Northwestern, we have the CAP at Delnor Hospital and at Kishwaukee, or at Delnor Cancer Center and at Kishwaukee Cancer Center. We don't yet have it at the Warrenville Cancer Center. In Warrenville, the patients still bring their coolers and their ice caps, gel caps with them. So.
Great. You know what? Now, thank you very much, presenters. That was awesome information. If anyone has any questions for Patti, Alison, or Jennifer, please feel free. This is a Q&A time. So if you have anything that you're thinking about, please ask right now.
I was diagnosed in November with a brain tumor, and it took me a long time really to decide to start the treatment. It was a hard decision, but I finally took that decision these days, and I should start it in like 10 days from now. It's going to be my first treatment. I have like very short knowledge about all of this. My treatment should be that I'm going to take the chemotherapy, but it's going to be pills. And then I'm going to have the radiation. It's in my right frontal loop. So it's going to be the right, just over my over my forehead, just this area, like over my forehead and my right ear. So I'm not sure if this cooler cap can help with that, or is it something that doesn't like go with the radiation, or what exactly?
To my knowledge, it hasn't been used with oral chemotherapy or radiation, to my knowledge. And part of that is with oral chemotherapy, you get, very consistent blood levels over a very long period of time, right? So the idea behind cooling after an infusion is you're cooling during the times when the blood levels are the highest as the chemicals are infusing and then your body, is excreting them. So during those peak blood levels, you're keeping your scalp cold. With oral chemotherapies, you're taking them throughout the day over the course of days or weeks. And so you're getting consistent blood levels. And I don't know that a cold cap would help that. Maybe Patti, have you heard of any indications with radiation with any type of?
I have not. And I would think that, especially with the head, I wouldn't think that it would be helpful.
Right. I would agree. I don't think this would be something, just from what you've told us, I don't think that this would be something that would be indicated for you, unfortunately.
Right.
You'd hate to do all this and not have it be helpful, but yeah, you also have to kind of meet the criteria. And I don't think, based on what you've told us, that would be something that would be available or helpful.
Another thing to mention is that I think that it's recommended only for solid tumor cancers. And someone in the medical field can correct me on this, but I've done a lot of research. So like blood cancers, leukemia, it's not indicated for. So
right.
It's a solid tumor cancer thing, primarily breast, and they've expanded it recently to other solid tumor cancers.
That is correct. And again, it's been tested in these specific drug regimens that I'm showing you. These are the ones that the company's actually done clinical trials and said this amount of time is recommended for this type of medicine. And so once you get outside of these regimens, it's like, well, we could do it, but for how long, we don't really know. So it's not really tested, or we don't know if it would necessarily even work. But you're right, Alison. It would be any solid tumor that receives any of these regimens.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it looks like there's one message or one question in the chat too. Are there plans for the Warrenville Cancer Center? We are considering it at Warrenville, and we're trying to figure out how we can do that. Space is an issue, and so trying to just figure out where can we have patients cool once they're done with treatment, so that we can continue to give chemotherapy to other patients. But I would expect to see it coming to the Warrenville Cancer Center. I just don't know when. I know the physicians are anxious to have it.
One thing I would like to mention is that I'm on Facebook groups with women from all over the world, and they've been doing this in Europe and Australia for decades. And these women know what's going on, and they've got it down. There's no evidence that it's going to come back in your scalp and all this. And we need to be kind of the trailblazers here. The FDA has approved it. The clinical trials are done, and so for a patient, I sort of feel like I need to be a trailblazer. This made a meaningful difference in my cancer story. Meaningful, hugely. I'm a year out, and the new hair that's growing back is 4 inches long. I would look like a Muppet if I didn't have this. And it's expensive. A lot of these women cannot afford it. Who can afford $4,000 on top of their cancer bills? It's a very small handful. So, to the extent that I or anyone else can be an advocate for this, educate the doctors, educate the cancer centers, and bring in a couch if people need places to cool, or just bring it into the mainstream of cancer recovery for people in the United States. That's what I would like to do.
That's awesome, Alison. just, I mean, you've walked in these shoes, you know exactly what this is like. And your hair looks great. It looks great.
I blew it dry today, special for this call.
Oh my gosh,
It's
I
a
love
big
it.
deal.
So good.
I love it.
Yeah. You have to have some owners of this program that help keep moving things forward, make sure that the schedule can accommodate all the people that need to come on to train all of the, the MAs and the nurses. Like, it's definitely a commitment, but I think as more and more places offer it, hopefully they'll get on board and say, well, we need to as well, because it's the right thing to do. But also from a business model, they don't want to lose business because people will go down the street if they need to,
Sure.
Well,
Yeah.
and
And there's
physicians,
a lot of red tape involved, And the nurses, the last thing they want to do is be doing, I mean, that's understood. But I feel like we need to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. I went to the college at the University of Iowa. I have 5 sorority sisters currently going through this, and we're 44 years old. There is not a single machine in the state of Iowa for them to do this treatment. Not a single machine. And, we live in a big metropolitan area. This needs to be downtown at Northwestern. This needs to at least be an option for people, even if they have to pay for it themselves.
and I do think, oncologists are evidence, they're driven by the evidence. And so in 2017 was when a large trial was actually published showing that the safety and the background behind scalp cooling and the trials, there were more in 2019. So I do think that now I know the physicians are much more comfortable with it now that the evidence is there supporting it and supporting the safety of it. So somebody else asked, if you have a recurrence, are you eligible for this treatment for a stage 3A first-time ovarian cancer?
So I think that it would be dependent upon the regimen, first of all, right? We've treated lots of gynae oncology. They have to meet the rest of the criteria, but as long as it's not a metastatic situation, we would definitely consider the regimen and see if they're overall eligible. So possibly, I would definitely talk to your team about it, to your healthcare providers, or your cancer providers.
Yeah, these are great questions for your own physician. Take the information that we've been able to give you, and it opens the door for you to be able to discuss it with them.
And like I said, if they don't have it, there's there's more and more places around Illinois that are offering it as well. If it's something that's really important to you, then you can get it, right? Maybe not, I don't know exactly where you're seeking care, but it's available all around. We're lucky in Illinois, not like Iowa, apparently.
Yeah.
I want to thank everyone who was involved in this. This was a great panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you for letting us talk.
Yeah.
Thanks for
share the
having me.
information.
Yeah.
And Alison, thank you for sharing your story and for all the hard work you've done to help our patients.
Oh my God.
Oh, absolutely.
And Alison, I can tell you are nowhere near done with this project. Like, you want to get the word out. So good for you. This is so great. Thank you for sharing your story, and thanks for giving us the chance to talk about this super cool technology that's really helping a lot of people.